When I stepped off that taxi in front of my parents' house in San Diego, I wasn't expecting a parade. But I also didn't expect silence. No hug. No welcome home. Just a white envelope taped to the fridge, my name scribbled on it like an overdue power bill. Inside? A $75,000 invoice. That was how my family greeted me after 4 years in Iraq. And trust me, that was just the beginning. The sun was setting as I stood on the curb outside that postcard-perfect house. White picket fence. Fresh-cut lawn. A wind chime dancing in the breeze. It should have felt like coming home. But instead, it felt like stepping into someone else's life, one that had moved on without me. My boots hit the pavement hard as I stepped out of the cab. The military duffel on my back still dug into my shoulders, like it hadn't realized I was off duty now. I had dust in my hair that no shampoo could scrub out, and a stiffness in my spine that didn't come from sleeping rough, it came from 4 years of sleeping light. Always one ear open, I took a deep breath before opening the front door. I told myself it would be okay. That they'd be surprised. That maybe, just maybe, they'd be proud. I was wrong. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The only sound was the soft hiss of bacon frying in the kitchen. And there it was, right on the fridge, in bold blue ink, Cassie, my sister's handwriting. I tore the envelope open with a sense of dread already building in my chest. It wasn't a letter. No welcome home. No we missed you. It was a bill, $75,000, for a Porsche. Apparently, I'd totaled her car before leaving for basic training. The thing is, I never drove that car. Never touched it. But there it was, neatly itemized like a lawyer's exhibit. My mom, Lorraine, muttered, "Cassie, you're back," without even looking up from the stove. She didn't stop flipping the bacon. Didn't turn around. Didn't blink. My dad, George, retired Marine, glanced up from his armchair, peered over his glasses, and said, still breathing, "Huh? Thought you'd flake out again like college." His voice was flat. No warmth. Just judgment, like always. Then came Cassie. My little sister. 27, lawyer, environmental activist, and professional soul sucker. She strolled in wearing some designer outfit like she was prepping for Vogue. Sipped from a crystal glass like she was hosting a gala. "You can handle that invoice, right?" she said, waving her hand like it was an afterthought. "I've got a press conference next week, and I need the car." "I mean, you've been off doing whatever you do. It's time you take responsibility." And then, they laughed, soft little chuckles, like it was funny, like I was funny. They didn't know I'd led Black Ops missions through Baghdad, where the wind carried sand and whispers of ambushes. They didn't know my call sign was Phantom, because I went where no one else would and brought my team back alive. To them, I was just the college dropout who ran away to find herself in the army. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just picked up my duffel, walked upstairs, and shut the door. In the quiet, I reached into the hidden side pocket of my bag and pulled out a USB drive. It looked like nothing, a dull piece of carbon. But it held everything. Operation Silver Spear, a classified mission, one that never made the news. I plugged it into my encrypted tablet and waited. One buzz, then a message flashed across the screen: Silver Spear breach confirmed. Prepare for testimony. Code 9, Bennett. That name, General Bennett, was mine. Not official, not on paper. But inside Task Unit Phantom. That's what they called me. Because I didn't just survive. I led. A week later, I found myself sitting in the back of a conference hall at Coronado Naval Base. Cassie was being honored for her contributions to environmental justice or some fluff like that. She was being named Advocate of the Year for her shoreline preservation work. My parents were front row. Beaming. My mom wore pearls. My dad sat straight like he was back in uniform. I wore a gray coat and no insignia. Just me. Quiet. Unseen, Cassie took the stage with all the grace of a politician. Her voice echoed through the room: "We must preserve what we protect. Our planet, our values, our future." I almost laughed. She used to yell at me about carbon emissions whenever I left a light on. But she never once asked what I was fighting for over there in Iraq. Then, right as she raised her hand to toast the crowd, General Bennett. The voice cut through the hall like a whip, commanding. Clear. Unmistakable. I turned. Slowly, and there he was, Colonel Marcus Avery. My former CO, decorated. Tough. The man who saw me drag our injured comms officer through a burning warehouse and still stay calm enough to set a perimeter. He was in full dress uniform. All eyes turned. Cassie dropped her glass. It shattered on the floor. My father stood half up, confused. My mother clutched her pearls. Colonel Avery walked forward. General Bennett, he repeated, nodding with full recognition. Not asking. Confirming, I nodded back. Just once, and just like that, the room shifted, everything changed. Back at the motel just outside base, I dropped my pack onto the scuffed laminate floor. The place smelled like air freshener and stale coffee, and the hum of the old HVAC unit filled the silence. I powered on my encrypted tablet, not out of paranoia, but out of habit. Years in special ops teach you to always check your six. I was planning to browse a few mission logs, maybe reread some of the notes my team had uploaded before the files went dark. Something to ground me. Instead, a red warning filled the screen. Unauthorized access detected. Operation Silver Spear archive breached. My chest went tight. I opened the log files. The breach had happened 30 hours ago. Right around the time I had arrived home. While the tablet sat on the coffee table in my parents' living room, I traced the IP address. It pinged back to a familiar location, my parents' home network. The password used, my birthday. It wasn't a brute force hack. It was someone who knew me. Someone who thought they were just poking around an old device. There was only one person who'd do that, Chloe. My sister had always been curious. But curiosity, mixed with a dash of entitlement, is a dangerous thing. She probably thought she'd find some old photos or emails to use against me in an argument. But instead, she stumbled onto a top-secret mission archive, one classified beyond congressional review. Silver Spear wasn't just a mission. It was the kind of op that disappears if the wrong people look too close. And now, it was out in the open. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I just sat on the motel bed, the screen still glowing in front of me, trying to make sense of the impossible. Then, another notification popped up, export detected. The files hadn't just been opened, they'd been copied. I scrambled through the access logs and found the endpoint. It didn't go to a media outlet, it went to a government server, more specifically, to a classified network under the jurisdiction of Senator Alan Mercer, a hardliner known for saying that women in combat units are an emotional liability. The same Mercer who'd spent years trying to defund special forces programs that didn't align with his vision of a traditional command structure. My stomach dropped, the files had been altered. I knew it before I opened them. But I had to see it for myself. I accessed the backup I'd encrypted years ago. Pulled it from a private cloud hidden behind so many layers of firewalls it would have taken a state-level actor a week to crack, and there it was, the original versus the altered. In my version, I halted an airstrike to protect 40 civilians, including children. I defused a chemical IED with no tools, no backup, under live fire. My team called it the most critical leadership call they'd ever witnessed. In the altered version, the halt of the strike was framed as insubordination. Footage of me cutting the fuse was clipped halfway through to make it look like I hesitated. The commendation section had been removed completely. They were rewriting my legacy. Not just to discredit me, but to make an example out of me. I stood up, heart pounding, and walked to the motel window. Outside, the street lamps flickered. Somewhere out there, someone had taken my sister's careless mistake and used it as a weapon, and it was working. The next morning, I drove straight to Chloe's law office in downtown San Diego. Her firm's headquarters was some eco-chic high-rise wrapped in reclaimed wood and powered by solar panels. Slogans like "Justice is renewable" lined the walls. I didn't wait. I pushed past the receptionist and stepped into her glass-walled office. She looked up, startled but not afraid. "Cassie." I dropped the tablet onto her desk. The red screen glared up at her. "You opened this," I said flatly. She blinked. I thought it was just an old iPad." "I didn't mean, you triggered a military-grade encryption bypass. That tablet contained classified materials from Operation Silver Spear." Her face went pale. "I didn't send anything," she said. "I just opened a couple files. Maybe clicked a few things." I took a deep breath. Someone accessed the exported data less than 24 hours later. From a military oversight committee server. They had the password. They knew what to look for. Chloe sat back in her chair. A hand over her mouth. "There was a man. After the awards ceremony. He approached me outside. Said he was with defense. Asked if I'd seen anything unusual on your tablet." "What did he look like?" She hesitated. "Tall. Gray hair. Quiet. Had a badge, but I didn't catch the agency." I pulled out my phone and loaded a still frame from my parents' home security feed. "The man who lingered near our gate the morning after I returned. That's him," she whispered. "His name was Leonard Shaw, retired colonel, strategic advisor, ex-director of a Black Ops branch called Nightglass, a division so deep it didn't officially exist. He was the kind of guy who didn't kill your career. He erased it." Chloe spoke again, barely audible. "He knew things. About you. About the Porsche, the dropout. Stuff only family knows." That's when it clicked. The invoice, the $75,000 Porsche bill, wasn't just petty revenge. It was ammunition. It painted a picture. A narrative. Cassie Bennett, reckless. Irresponsible. Emotionally unstable. They weren't just trying to discredit my service. They were building a persona, one they could use to tear me down if things went public. I stepped toward the door. "I need you to be honest now. No more silence. No more passive-aggressive smiles. Because they've made me the story, and they're writing the ending without me." She nodded. "I didn't mean to start anything." "No one ever does," I said, "but the damage is still done." That night, an email came through a secure military line. No greeting. No fluff. Just one sentence: required appearance, Pentagon. Classified hearing. Operation Silver Spear. 72 hours, I didn't panic. I packed one change of clothes, one backup drive, and a carbon-encased USB, sealed like a coffin. It wasn't just about clearing my name anymore, it was about making sure the truth didn't get buried. The flight to DC was quiet. Too quiet. I sat in seat 14A with my duffel tucked under the chair, the carbon-encased drive wrapped in a sock beneath my clothes. I didn't sleep. Didn't read. Just stared at the clouds, replaying everything I'd seen in my head like it was some classified movie reel no one else would ever get to watch. When the wheels hit the tarmac, the message was clear: this wasn't going to be a warm welcome or a second chance. This was a test. And the only way I was passing was if I proved that the truth meant more than the story they wanted to sell. The Pentagon's hearing chamber wasn't what you'd expect. No drama. No theatrics. Just a cold, hexagonal room hidden deep within the building's secure levels. 6 officials sat behind a long steel desk, each one older, decorated, and visibly unimpressed. At the center of it all sat Senator Alan Mercer himself. The man behind the manipulation. The politician who called women like me distractions on the battlefield. He stared at me like I was just another problem to outlast. "Commander Bennett," he said, not bothering to lift his eyes from the file in front of him. "Would you consider halting an authorized strike in a combat zone an act of insubordination?" I leaned forward. My voice didn't shake. I considered it an act of leadership. I let the silence settle before continuing. I had visual confirmation of 40 civilians, including 13 children, moving from the target site. I assessed the risk, made a judgment call, and prevented a war crime. If that qualifies as insubordination, then maybe you should recheck the oath we all swore to uphold. Mercer tapped his pen once. The room didn't move. I reached into my bag and plugged the USB into the console. The screen behind me flickered. The first clip showed women and children waving white rags as they emerged from the side of a crumbling factory. The second clip, helmet cam footage of my team entering the compound under live fire. My voice came through the comms, "Hold fire." Civilians confirmed. Repeat, "Hold fire." Then came the footage they'd tried to cut, the chemical IED. The trembling wires, my hands working furiously against the clock, and finally, the moment they hadn't expected me to keep, Colonel Leonard Shaw's voice, through the static, "If you weren't so damn soft, this would have been over by lunch." The room was frozen. I didn't hesitate, I said. I acted. And I saved lives. No one interrupted. I unplugged the drive, stood up, and walked out. I didn't know what would happen next. A commendation? A cover-up? A quiet reassignment to some desk job in a windowless office? Didn't matter. The truth was in the room now. And that was more than I'd had in years. I hadn't even made it back to my motel before the next order came through. A direct call. No pleasantries. Just cold precision. "Commander Bennett," the voice said. "You're being activated. Assignment, Operation Black Dagger. Deployment window, 48 hours. I paused. Authorization, Deputy Secretary of Defense. Click, that was it. On paper, it sounded like an honor. A chance to reaffirm my command after the hearing. But my gut told me different. It felt too fast. Too perfect. The kind of assignment they give you when they want to remove you, quietly. No mess. No press. Black Dagger was a special ops directive focused on intercepting chemical trafficking routes in northern Syria, routes eerily similar to those we exposed during Silver Spear. Coincidence? Not a chance. I landed at Ramstein Air Base in Germany 2 days later. The mission briefing was curt, clinical. My team was a mix of rangers, analysts, and a few fresh-faced operatives I didn't recognize. One of them, Lieutenant Ryan Keller, early 30s, clean-cut, crossed his arms and met my eyes squarely. "With all due respect, Commander," he said, "I don't follow people whose last mission ended in scandal." I stared at him for a long beat. Then flipped open the recon map. "Good," I said finally. "I don't need followers. I need professionals." He didn't say another word. But he didn't leave either. That night, I sat alone in the command tent reviewing satellite data. One thing immediately jumped out: the coordinates didn't line up. Our designated landing zone looked clean. But the thermal scan told another story: movement, heat signatures, 6 kilometers off the mark. I ran a comparison against older recon files. The discrepancy was obvious. Then I saw something worse. The updated images had been uploaded by the Technical Oversight Division, a division that, until last month, had reported directly to Colonel Shaw. I requested a verification from Central Command. Response: request denied. You do not have the authority to override approved strike parameters. We deployed anyway. The mission turned sideways within the hour. Past checkpoint 3 in the Badia Desert, a hidden RPG slammed into our lead vehicle. 2 men down. Comm lines cut. GPS scrambled. It was a trap. No evac. No air support. I rerouted the team toward an abandoned pipeline system I remembered from a 2-year-old schematic. It was our only way out. We crawled on our bellies under heat and fire, dragging the injured with us, until we hit a dead end, a rusted missile battery guarding the exit. There wasn't time for backup. I told the team to hold, and then I moved. I breached the launcher's override myself, pulse grenade, short blade, bare hands bleeding as I cut through the casing. With 6 seconds to spare, the system shut down. We escaped, but when I finally collapsed in the dirt behind the convoy, something caught my eye, wedged inside my helmet padding. A tracker, a military-grade locator, not standard issue. Definitely not planted by my team. Someone had tagged me. Back at the temporary base in Jordan, I tore through my gear. The signal had been active for days, relaying to a satellite uplink tied to a server previously assigned to Shaw's command center. It wasn't paranoia anymore. They wanted me in that desert. They wanted to know where I was when it all went south. I stormed into the Intel Division's front office the next morning. Demanded a meeting with the regional coordinator. Access denied, the clerk said, not even looking up. This is post-op debrief, I snapped. I have the right to file an intel challenge. Senior officers are unavailable for direct consultation during review. I asked again. Politely, then with force, same answer, so I stopped asking. I went back to my tent. Locked the flap. And powered on the encrypted comms line I hadn't used since Baghdad. I called him. Shaw picked up after one ring. His voice was flat, unsurprised. Cassie, he said. You always were good at surviving chaos. You planned Black Dagger, I said. Didn't you? He chuckled softly. The same condescending laugh I'd heard in Kuwait. We didn't need to bury you, Cassie. We just had to let the pressure do the work. You sent me into a kill zone. Don't act shocked. You don't fit the brand. And sooner or later, someone always has to clean up the narrative. I didn't argue. I just hit record. The moment that call ended, I didn't waste a second. I transferred the recording, Shaw's voice admitting everything, to a secure drive and encrypted it 6 ways from Sunday. Then I sent it to the one person I knew I could trust with it, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Lane. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. She was sharp, uncompromising, and had once been the congressional liaison for 2 administrations. If anyone could thread the needle between politics and truth without getting shot in the crossfire, it was her. I didn't include a long message. Just the audio file and a single line, they sent me out here to disappear. Her reply came 5 minutes later, understood. I'll get it to the right people. I wanted to believe that meant safety, but the real world doesn't work like that. A few hours later, while my team was still recovering from the ambush, another ping hit my secure comms line. It was from the internal military network. An unredacted internal memo had just been leaked. It was authored by Senator Mercer. The same man who had sat across from me at the hearing. In the document, he outlined Operation Black Dagger not as a standard deployment, but as a calculated maneuver. His words, not mine, strategic opportunity to mitigate reputational risks associated with Commander Bennett. Media management will be simpler if she does not return. Contingency statements already drafted. No vague language. No interpretation needed. He had planned for me not to make it home. Not only had they set me up, they were ready to erase me. I sat in that canvas tent with the night heat clinging to my skin and dust still crusted in my wounds, staring at that memo like it was written in fire. And then it hit me. This wasn't just about me, this was about precedent. About building a playbook to discredit women in leadership roles before they ever got the chance to rewrite the rules. The ambush. The altered intel. The planted tracker. It was all part of a bigger machine, one designed to grind people like me down to dust. But they'd made a mistake. They thought I'd fold. They didn't know I'd learned to fight with silence. That I could sit in the dark longer than they could hold a spotlight. That I wasn't just angry, I was ready. 2 days later, the summons arrived. I was to appear before a closed-door Strategic Response Committee in Washington. Emergency session. No press. No cameras. Just high-ranking officials with the power to dig, erase, or expose. I wore a plain uniform. No ribbons. No flash. I didn't need the trappings, I needed the truth. Inside the chamber, the tone had shifted. It wasn't hostile. Wasn't warm either. Just quiet. Focused. Like everyone in the room had finally decided this wasn't going to be business as usual. I laid everything out. The manipulated intel. The refusal to correct recon data. The tracking device in my helmet. The call with Shaw. The leaked memo from Mercer. I even played Shaw's recording aloud, letting his voice fill the room once again. You don't fit the brand. We just had to let the pressure do the work. No one interrupted. When the clip ended, one of the senior advisors leaned in. He was in his 70s. Thin-framed glasses, deep lines around his eyes. The kind of man who had seen every kind of war except the one being fought here. Commander Bennett, he said softly. Do you believe this was part of a coordinated effort to remove you from future leadership? I met his gaze. I don't believe it. I said. I know it. Then the door opened, everyone turned, and in walked Chloe, hair tied back. Blazer crisp. She held a leather folder under one arm and walked straight to the table like she belonged there. The room froze. "With your permission," she said, addressing the panel, "I'd like to submit technical findings relevant to this case." I said nothing. Just watched. She opened the folder. I conducted a forensic analysis of the tablet Cassandra Bennett left at our family home. The files were accessed using an administrative bypass code, one I didn't even know existed until I reverse-engineered the encryption logs. She passed around printed reports. The copied files were then altered using software only available through two known defense contractors. Both vendors were under direct oversight from Colonel Shaw's division. And the IP address used to export the edited files? It was traced back to a secure terminal registered under Senator Mercer's private office. Dead silence, no more guessing. No more gray areas, it was all there: names, dates, code traces, digital fingerprints. Chloe had dug in and brought the receipts. For the first time in my life, I didn't see her as my little sister trying to fix things too late. I saw her as a partner. The committee called for a recess. When we returned, Leonard Shaw was already waiting, summoned for questioning. He stood at the center of the room in full dress uniform. Still calm. Still composed. Still the master of projection. I stepped forward and placed two things on the table in front of him. 1. The original USB drive with Silver Spear's complete data. 2. A photograph of my team from that mission, 8 of us, arms around each other, dust-streaked and grinning. Brothers and sisters. Warriors. Survivors. Shaw looked down. "You know I'll never get a statue," I said quietly. He didn't look up. "You know you never will." "I don't need one," I replied. "I just need the truth to hold its ground." Behind Shaw, one of the clerks took notes. Another whispered something to the committee chair. An hour later, the findings came in. Leonard Shaw, suspended from all government advisory positions. Pending a full investigation. A broader inquiry into Senator Mercer's actions was immediately launched. Outside, the rain had started to fall, hard and cold as it hit the steps of the Capitol. No reporters. No cameras. No applause, just me, walking down the stairs, lighter than I'd felt in years. 1 week after the hearing, a letter arrived by hand, sealed, precise, and marked with the insignia of the Department of Defense. Inside was a single sheet, a formal invitation: Strategic Honor Ceremony for Classified Command Contributions, nominee, Bennett, Cassandra R., clearance code, 7T Ghost. I stared at it for a long time. Not out of pride. Not out of disbelief. Just stillness. That kind of quiet that settles in after a long storm, when the wind stops howling and even the birds hesitate to sing. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't post about it. I didn't even call Chloe. I just walked into my closet, pulled out my uniform. Then folded it right back up. Instead, I chose a white shirt. Gray slacks. No medals. No decorations. No bars. I would show up as myself. The Pentagon's press hall was buzzing when I arrived. Rows of seats were already filled with journalists from CNN, Defense One, Stars and Stripes. Officials paced the carpet, adjusting lapel pins, whispering updates. At the podium stood Clara Nguyen, the Pentagon's chief spokesperson, known for being calm under fire and absolutely impossible to fluster. When she stepped up to the mic, the room went still. "Today," she began, "we honor an individual who upheld their oath when no one was watching. Someone who didn't ask for recognition. Someone who acted not out of ambition, but out of principle. A leader who carried the burden of command with no demand for credit." She paused, scanning the crowd, then her eyes found mine. "It is my privilege," she said, her voice steady, "to introduce General Cassandra Bennett." The room seemed to freeze. Not commander. Not veteran. General. It was never an official title, not publicly. It was the name whispered in encrypted comms, in sandstorm briefings, in the backs of aircraft hangars where only ghosts and warfighters walked. But now it was real. A slow rustle spread through the room as people stood. Reporters. Officers. Even the camera crew. I rose from my seat. In the front row, I saw them. My father, George, sat ramrod straight, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitch. My mother, Lorraine, was beside him, fingers clenched around the edge of her seat, and between them, Chloe. No one looked away this time. I walked to the podium slowly, heels echoing against the marble. I adjusted the mic once, and then I let the silence breathe. For years ago, I said, I came home from Iraq. I found a $75,000 invoice taped to the refrigerator. No banner. No balloons. Just a bill. And one message: you'll never amount to anything. I let that memory breathe, raw and undressed. For a long time, I believed them. I continued. I believed silence meant failure. That distance meant shame. But I stand here today not because I won. I stand here because I survived. I survived the battlefield. I survived the smear campaign. And I survived with the truth still intact. I didn't ask for applause. I didn't need it, but it came anyway, soft at first. Then louder. Then a full standing ovation that roared against the steel and glass walls. I stepped back from the mic, and I saw it, my father, standing. Saluting, my mother, tears glinting in her eyes, Chloe, her hand over her mouth, nodding like she finally understood. After the ceremony, I slipped out the side doors and into the crisp Virginia air. The buzz of cameras and conversations melted behind me. I needed space. Just a breath. I walked past the rows of flags and into the open garden where cherry blossoms were just beginning to bloom. And there she was, Chloe, standing beneath one of the trees, holding something in her hands. You remember this? She asked. She unfolded it, a photograph. Me, age 19, at a bus station. Backpack almost bigger than my body. Hair pulled back tight. Determination in my eyes, fear in the corners. I hated you that day, she said. I thought you were abandoning me. But now I get it. You weren't running away. You were running toward something. Toward you. She tucked the photo back into her jacket. I didn't understand then. Now I do. I didn't speak. I didn't need to, I just nodded. A few weeks later, another letter arrived, this time from the city of San Diego. The Veterans Affairs Office had completed a small memorial site overlooking the ocean, dedicated to unnamed missions and those who served in silence. The park was empty when I got there. A curved granite wall rose from the earth like a question mark carved into stone. No ranks. No medals. Just names. Just operations. Just truth. I ran my fingers along the inscriptions until I found mine. Bennett, Cassandra R., Silver Spear, Black Dagger, A Guide Through Darkness. I didn't cry, but I felt the weight of it. Solid. Real. Earned. A boy stood nearby, no older than 9. Buzz cut. Cotton flag shirt tucked into his jeans. He looked up at me, pointing at the plaque. Is that you? He asked. I nodded. He pulled something from his pocket, a slightly crumpled daisy. I want to be brave like you, he said. Even if nobody believes me. Even if I gotta do it alone. I knelt to his level. You don't need the world to believe in you, I told him. You just need to know who you are, and hold on to it. No matter what. He smiled, then ran back to his mom waiting by the flagpole. I turned to leave, and froze, by the big oak tree near the park's gate. Were my parents. My father stepped forward first. No words. Just a hand on my shoulder, firm, warm, real, then my mother. She wrapped her arms around me like she'd been waiting my whole life to do it, and last was Chloe. She held a small wooden frame, inside, a photo I'd never seen before. Me in Fallujah. Arm raised in command. Dust in the air. Uniform billowing in the wind. This belongs in our home, she said, not just on this wall. We stood there together for a long time, not as adversaries, not as the broken family I had once feared we'd always be, but as people who finally understood each other, people who had finally learned to look, not away, but toward, at the truth, at me, at everything I had survived. The final chapter of all this didn't come with a medal. There was no parade, no headline, no 21-gun salute. What came instead was a quiet kind of peace, one I hadn't felt in years. For a long time, I thought I'd never find it. Not after everything they took. Not after the silence. The lies. The betrayal from the very people who were supposed to have my back, both in uniform and in blood. But here's the truth they didn't expect me to hold on to: you don't need permission to matter. I spent the next few months under the radar. No media. No interviews. Just time, precious and unscripted. I took long walks by the ocean. Learned how to cook something other than MREs. Chloe and I started talking again, not just about the past, but about the weird, simple things. Like music we used to love or movies we quoted growing up. Dad would call once a week. Always brief. But he was trying. And Mom sent me old photos from her attic, me in ROTC, smiling like I knew exactly where I was going. Healing didn't come all at once. But it came. Then one day, I got a call. Unknown number. Standard protocol. I didn't answer. But it went to voicemail. It was Lieutenant Keller. "Hey, ma'am. Just wanted to say thanks. You saved our asses out there. Didn't get a chance to say it at the debrief. But I saw what you did. What you risked. Some of us noticed. Some of us will remember." That was enough. A month later, I found myself invited to a private roundtable hosted by the Joint Special Operations Command. Nothing fancy. No press. Just chairs, water bottles, and silence. They wanted to discuss the future of leadership inclusion in Special Forces Ops. I sat at the end of the table, flanked by two men who looked like they hadn't blinked since the Cold War. The chairperson asked, "Commander Bennett, if you could rewrite one rule from your experience, what would it be?" I didn't think. I just said it. Don't mistake silence for weakness. Some of your best operators are the ones you never hear coming. And some of your worst decisions come from ignoring the ones who've already walked through fire. A few heads nodded, a few didn't. That was fine. My job wasn't to convince the room. My job was to make sure it couldn't be ignored anymore. A few weeks later, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Just a handwritten note inside, for the one who held the line when the system tried to bury it. Inside was a framed satellite image, black dagger, the compound, the extraction point, a single figure, circled in red, me, crawling through the dust, seconds before I disabled the launcher. Underneath it, in neat handwriting, "You didn't just lead. You endured." I never found out who sent it, didn't need to. Not long after, I was invited to give a guest lecture at a military academy up north. A small room. 30 cadets. All barely old enough to vote. I didn't give them tactics, I gave them this: sometimes, you'll be asked to fight two wars at once, the one on the battlefield, and the one for your own name. One is about staying alive. The other is about staying true. Don't let the second one kill you. They didn't clap. They just stared, and that meant they heard me. One night, I went back to that granite wall overlooking the Pacific. It was just after sundown. The sky was bruised purple, and the water below reflected back the last of the light. I stood there for a while, reading the names again. Some I recognized. Most I didn't, but all of them mattered. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I smiled, not because it was over, but because I knew that no one would ever write my ending for me again. The takeaway: you don't need to be decorated to be worthy. You don't need applause to be right. And you don't need validation to keep going. Sometimes the loudest victories are the ones no one claps for, the kind carved in silence, where dignity doesn't scream, it stands. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: surviving with your soul intact is a kind of triumph, too. So, if you're out there, fighting your own invisible war, being doubted, dismissed, underestimated, I see you, and more importantly, I believe you.